So for today's Sunday reading, I've chosen Psalm 86, verse 11 to 17. Our reading starts with an insight into how holiness works. Even the psalmist, some 1,000 years before the cross, has worked it out that you can't earn holiness. Our holiness starts with God. So if we want to walk in truth, then we need him to teach us his truth, to teach us his ways. If we want to fear him, then we need him to give us an undivided heart. You might even say it's a reflex. It's the outcome, the reflex response to intimacy in the word, that place of truth. In worship, that place of singular focus. If you're poked in the eye, you blink, and so it is with holiness. It reflexes out of intimacy. But the part that I really want to unpack today is verse 17. The psalmist says, "Give me a sign of your goodness. Give me a sign of your goodness, something visible to my enemies, something that lets others see God's comfort and provision and help upon my life." And I was really struck by this idea of a sign. And so I just started to flip through the pages of my Bible to places that I knew that talked about the idea of a sign. That word sign in Hebrew, it can be translated as a mark or a token. It draws on imagery of how a slave might be marked by their owner to show who they belong to, which sounds horrific by today's standards, but the sort of slavery that was going on in biblical times that God allowed within this culture and context was quite different from the transatlantic slave trade that blights our nation. This was, in many ways, a desirable socio-economic lift for people. It ensured protection, it ensured provision, it was governed by rights. It was more desirable than poverty, and it often led to that person becoming part of a family. Now, this idea of a sign or a mark takes us right back to the first Exodus around 1300 BC. Israel were slaves in Egypt, and so that they could be set free, they were told to put a mark, a sign, a token on the doorpost, to shed the blood of a lamb and paint it on the doorpost. And then when the angel of death passed over, those who were under that mark were saved. A similar thing happens around 600 BC. Ezekiel chapter 9, you can read it. It's a great passage. Jerusalem is under siege by the Babylonians. Soldiers are moving through the city. And God tells this man who is dressed in pure white, maybe an angel, maybe Jesus in the Old Testament. God says, put a mark on the foreheads of those who have remained faithful. They are literally marked on the foreheads with the sign of a cross. If you're interested in language, it's the ancient Paleo-Hebrew letter tau, which is a cross. And so the faithful remnant are saved. The danger passes over them. Fast forward to the cross of Jesus, and his blood covers us. We are marked with his blood. It is a mark of ownership. It means we belong to him. We are his treasured possession. It's a mark of protection. You know, it's a mark that is seen by the principalities and powers in the heavenly realms, in spiritual places. It's a mark that makes even the forces of hell tremble because they know whose we are. It is a mark of provision because it means we are members of God's household. We have fridge rights in the house of God because we are his, we belong to him. It's a mark that means we have no fear of final judgment, of how the end plays out. Revelation 7:3, we are of that vast crowd that are marked, that are sealed by Christ. And it's a mark, as we've seen in the Psalms, that is visible to the world, or at least it should be. And maybe you've had that in the past, like me, where someone says, "What is different about you?" Because you've been marked. We've often had non-Christians come into our home and comment on the peace in our home, the atmosphere. We've been marked for the world to see. And as the psalmist says, his prayer is that they will see that God has marked him and helped him and comforted him. That would be obvious to the world. And so I just wonder what difference this incredible truth will make in your life today. What difference this truth that we carry the mark of his goodness upon us. What difference that will make as you journey through life today. Because I believe it makes all the difference.